Today we're going to watch a video about philosophy. The topic of the video is confidence or self-confidence. So what I want you to do is pay attention to the video, and then at the end of the video we will talk about what you watched. Okay. Do you know who is Socrates? Okay. Socrates is a philosopher from ancient Greece. He was very famous. Socrates, he was around in the classical era, right, 399 BC, so he was alive like over 2,000 years ago. Classical Greek philosopher, credited as one of the founders of Western philosophy, being the first moral philosopher of the Western ethical tradition. What's moral? Moral is like the idea of good and bad, right? So your morality is what you think is good and what you think is bad. So a lot of the philosophers of this time asked questions about what is a good life, what do you have to do to be a good person, what kind of lifestyle do you need to have to be a good person, this kind of thing. So he was one of the first moral philosophers of the time. Okay. His life ended in a sad way. He was killed by the government. Okay, they made him drink poison because they found him to be too controversial. So too many people hated him. And they decided that he was dangerous to society and the young people, so they killed him. All right. This video is going to talk about his ideas. So Socrates had many students in his school, and they wrote down what he said. So they're going to look at his ideas and then see how those ideas are related to self-confidence. Do you guys understand the word self-confidence? So confidence, to be confident is to be sure, right? So if you're self-confident, you're sure of yourself. That means you know you can do things well, okay? So maybe you can be self-confident about your study skills. Maybe you know that you're a good student, right? So you're confident in your abilities at school. Or maybe you can be confident about your personality. You know that you're very funny and interesting and like you feel good about yourself. So self-confidence is just being sure of yourself. Maybe about one thing, maybe about many things, but generally it's the feeling that you can do something. So the whole video is an episode. It's 24 minutes, okay? It's all about Socrates and his ideas about self-confidence. I'm going to try to stop sometimes and talk to you about what we watched and maybe make sure that you understand. Okay? Alright. So we'll do our best.
We might well wonder whether ancient Greek civilization still has anything to say to us. Travel around Athens today, and you see that the modern city looms much larger than the traces of its past.
So do you know where this is, where he is driving in?
And yet,
this
just
is
as we get the odd
Athens,
glimpse of old
the capital of
buildings,
Greece.
so too it's sometimes possible to catch a hint of the ideas the ancient Greeks have given us. Almost 2,500 years ago, a philosopher was born here. His name was Socrates, and he's come to symbolize one of philosophy's most inspiring gifts to the rest of us. The idea that thinking logically about our lives might help us to be more certain of ourselves, more independent, less conformist, less hamstrung by what other people think. It's the dream that philosophy might set us free. I'd come to Athens to see how a man who famously died for his beliefs might give us the confidence to stand up for our own Socrates wrote nothing down, and we know what he said chiefly through a series of dialogues he features in, written by his pupil Plato.
So they're saying that we don't know what Socrates did. He didn't write anything down. We know everything about his ideas from his pupil Plato. Pupil means student, right? So his most famous student was another philosopher. His name is Plato. Okay. So most of what we are going to see today is dialogue. A dialogue is a conversation between two people. So in ancient Greece, they did not write textbooks, right? They wrote down conversations between people. And usually when they talk about philosophy, they just ask questions to each other and they answer the questions. And this way that they sort of develop a philosophy or a way of thinking, right? Just by asking questions and talking. So the lessons, the teachings of these people are usually just someone writing down conversations between a teacher and a student. Usually the student is asking the teacher questions and the teacher answers, and like this. And then later other students will read this conversation and learn something about, Socrates and his ideas. So.
We're not even sure that this strange little statue is of him. We know he was born in 469 BC and was married to a famously shrewish woman called Xanthippe. When asked why he'd married her, he replied that a horse trainer had to practice on the most spirited animals. There is one fact about him that stands out. Among all ancient philosophers, he is perhaps the greatest. And there is no clearer evidence of this fact than that he is the only philosopher readily available as a fridge magnet. The magnet suggests another fact about Socrates, that he was extraordinarily ugly. In the history of a subject with many notably ugly practitioners, he was surely the ugliest. Even his very good friends compared him to a stingray, a satyr, and a grotesque. He compounded his looks by almost never washing, rarely changing his cloak, and never wearing any sandals. It was said that he'd been born in order to spite shoemakers.
So do you understand what they're saying? So they're telling you about Socrates. All of these little heads behind him are of Socrates, the philosopher. And he was famous for his ideas, but also famous because everyone thought he was extremely ugly, right? So his friends called him ugly, other people called him ugly, and also his wife was very famous for being ugly too. So Socrates and his wife were both very ugly people. And also, what he's saying is that plus, so already everyone thinks he's ugly, so on top of that, he would not wash himself, so he would be very dirty, he would wear dirty clothes, and he also hated shoes. So he did not want to wear shoes ever. And so they say that the joke was that they said Socrates was born to spite shoemakers. So to spite is to do something that makes someone angry, right? So they're saying Socrates was made and put on earth to make shoemakers angry just because he hated shoes so much and never wore shoes. Okay. So he was a very strange kind of person, right? Didn't wash, didn't really look after his appearance, didn't wear shoes, but he had very famous teachings, right?
Socrates' idiosyncratic habits point the way to one of his most inspiring ideas. But we should find ways to build confidence in our own beliefs and not be too swayed by the opinions of others. There are great similarities between humans and sheep. We may not have wool on our backs or emit buying sounds, but we often have an urge to follow our fellow creatures passively and have a horror of breaking away from the group. Why do we follow sheepishly behind other people, particularly important other people?